An old standard there called "All of Me." Well, I'll just tell you guys a little bit about myself, a little bit more about the group, and we'll do one more song. So again, as Lori introduced me earlier, my name is Robert Bell, and I've been playing guitar for a while. I started kind of as a young teenager and played in a lot of pop or alternative type groups, I guess you would call it. I don't know, today maybe it's called indie music or something. But this is, I kind of started in the late 80s and played in a group I'm from Milwaukee and played in a group in Milwaukee called Address Unknown. And we had some success actually, and played like for Afro Concert Party with the B-52s and did an opening thing with the Smashing Pumpkins, believe it or not. And that's pretty cool stuff when you're like 18 years old, so I thought it was pretty all right, But actually what happened was after high school I decided that I needed to definitely go to college, and so ended up going to college here, and that's how I got to Minneapolis, and completely dropped music, and just because I really wanted to focus, and so I studied urban forestry at the College of Natural Resources at the University of Minnesota. But thing of it was, after college I was working for the DNR, and now I'm kind of in my mid-20s, and it kind of was one of those moments where it just struck me. I looked at my guitar, I was sitting in the corner, and I thought, I just don't want to be a weekend warrior. At least got to try and go for this as best I can. So here I was now with no actual like specific formal training on the instrument, and decided to do that. Decided to learn some scales, learn some arpeggios, learn how to read music, and just go for the whole thing and see what kind of career I could scratch out for myself. So quit that regular job and started to pursue music, and I'm probably about 27 years old at this time. So that was I got a late start, but I took it really seriously and got some good teachers and studied with them specifically and had them show me the ropes just for like 2 years. I went to each guy, and at that time there was no McNally Smith, otherwise I probably would have pursued something like this, because it's the structure. What you really need is the structure, and you can implement that yourself, but sometimes if it's already there for you, man, it's a lot easier, because really a lot of times about being a musician is you got to free yourself up so that you can have your personal voice, your personal, what I want to say, your interest in being a musician, your desire, your passion, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Your passion has to be able to take over. And sometimes if things are organized for you, you can be violent in your work, as Van Gogh said. So that's why I kind of pursued the study, so that I had a plan, but that I could still be interested in the music and make some kind of difference. So it just kind of got going pretty fast for me, and I learned quickly all the things that I needed to do. For example, the biggest thing no one told me about is if you're a musician, you're going to spend about 20 hours a week just doing admin. And for me, that means like booking shows and making sure charts are good and various things like that. And so that was a real surprise, but I learned how to do that. I went full-time in probably 2003, I suppose. I've been a full-time musician ever since then, and I've done all different kinds of things, whether that's composing music for short films or commercials, or playing on other people's albums. I've produced albums. I get to play guitar. I do probably about 250 shows a year, and all over the place, and travel. And as Lori mentioned, recently I was a guest soloist with the North Carolina Symphony, and that was pretty sweet. Probably the loudest band I've ever played with. For sure the loudest band. And remember, I played with some loud bands when I was a kid, so I was really surprised about that. And it's really interesting you look at these different levels of music, like being a jazz musician is really a beautiful thing. Like last night I played at Barbette, just a little 2-hour set, and today I'm here, and tonight this weekend I've got this is a 9-show week for me, so you keep real busy. But you go from being a soloist in a symphony to like playing a little club, and you've got to maintain the focus, maintain the energy, maintain the desire, and always put it out there as best you can. And I really love that part of it, because you never know who's listening, you never know who's watching, and you always have to believe that. And so I've really had a great time playing music, and I always have loved it. And my biggest problem is focus, because I love so many different genres of music and styles. And it's really interesting that if you can, as a musician, just dedicate yourself every once in a while to just focusing in on genres, it'll really be handy for you at a later time, no matter what style of music that you're working on, whether it's hip-hop or metal or bluegrass or folk or whatever it is. There's sub-genres within that. And if you can take a little bit from each one, it really makes you a more complete individual. And eventually, you end up developing your own voice, kind of an amalgamation from all these different styles and that sort of thing that you keep, or that you take, and it begins to be your own. So, and the group, for me, it was similar to what Jim was talking about. That I had one of those moments where I heard Django for the first time. I had never heard jazz guitar like that, and that was it for me. I knew, I was like, okay, this guy's got some fire, this guy's doing something, and it was really inspiring to me, so I just started pursuing Django from that moment forward, and probably always will be. It's a very interesting style of guitar. Have you guys seen these kind of guitars before? Yeah, so they're a totally different style. They're designed more like a cello or a violin, and this one's called a Dupont, so it comes from Cognac, France, and it's got a little hole. It's called Petite Bouche for small mouth, and it gives it a totally different sound. You can't really play it on a lot of different styles of music. So I have different instruments for different things, but when you're playing this style, it works for that because it's got a lot of bite and it's specific to this genre. So that's what drew me to the music, is the fire and the passion, and been working at it ever since. Well, let's play another tune, speaking of working at stuff. And how about Honeysuckle Rose? If we had a piano up here. What?
Sorry, one quick second. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, yeah.
I started when I was 8 years old. I only took lessons privately for a year, and I quit the private lesson, but I was fortunate because I grew up in Hopkins, Minnesota, suburb on the west side of Minneapolis, and they have orchestras in the schools, something that you don't see in the public schools these days very much. I started playing in school orchestra, started in 4th grade, all the way through 12th grade, and just going to school every day for an hour in orchestra. You just stay with it. I mean, I was a terrible violin player. I saw a picture of myself from when I was in 11th grade, and I'm like slouching, and I thought, my God, it's really bad technique, but I stuck with it, and that's my background. And then I studied with Richard Adams for 3.5 years, assistant concertmaster with the Minnesota Orchestra, so I got my technique, studied some violin concertos, and that gives you if you have classical technique on violin, that gives you the chops to pursue whatever style you want to go into. So obviously you have to forget about a lot of those techniques for jazz, like the vibrato, the heavy vibrato associated with some classical music. You have to leave that behind, and it's a whole different discipline, the classical and the jazz. So that's some of my background. I love to improvise.
Oh. One more back here. Yeah, a lot of people ask me about that. It was amazing, just when I was doing the symphony gig, here all these classical musicians, I thought they knew everything about music, and they had never seen a guitar like this, and they were wondering all about Django, so they were asking me, I heard these world-class musicians asking me all these questions, and so I gave them a brief explanation of what the music, of how he did his thing. So here's what happened with Django Reinhardt. He started out as a banjo player. He played 6-string banjo. And he had to, because at that time he was playing, like I was telling you before swing came in, there was a lot of musettes. He was playing with accordion players. So his wife, to make a living, he's a real gypsy, was selling plastic flowers. That's like what her living was. One night, he's 18 years old, they go to sleep, they don't have electricity, he knocks over a little flame candle thing, and the entire caravan goes up in flames, like immediately, because these plastic flowers burn on fire. Django, when he was rescuing his wife, pulling him out, got burned severely. His entire leg, his entire left side of his body. He was afraid of traditional doctors, so he refused to go to the hospital. And so what they did is they put him in a bed and told him, let him heal up for a year. So suddenly what happened is, because he didn't go to the doctors, he developed scar tissue on the back of his hand. And his left side of his leg was burned. And so what happened is, when the scar tissue healed, his hand was pulled back so severely that it was grossly disfigured. So his hand looked like this. Okay, so he didn't lose any fingers. He had all of his fingers. But what had happened is that scar tissue rendered these 3rd and 4th fingers useless. Essentially, I shouldn't say useless. He did use them for some things. but he certainly at that point became a two-finger guitar player. So there he sat with these burns all over his body. His banjo, who knows where it went. You know, he's a gypsy guy, so that anything goes. Things come and go out of your life like nobody's business, but an uncle brought him a guitar. And he would sit there in the bed just figuring out little things, just little major thing. This is like a typical Django thing. So he would do all two-finger runs. You know, if you think about like I'm playing a G major here, you know, you might, if you have all your fingers, you know, you might think of just play a simple scale like that. Well, that is really complicated if you've only got two fingers. So Django started foregoing a lot of scalar approaches and started doing a lot of arpeggios. So you'd hear him do things like, so that's just two fingers right there. And so it started he approached the fretboard totally differently. And so you'd have guys who, you know, you're playing in one area, but all of a sudden he's using the entire instrument, and it's a totally different sound. He's looking at the fretboard differently. And, you know, when you see a guy like playing a big chord like this, for example, like here's a G minor 6 chord like this. I'm using all of my fingers. And he would play something like that, but Django would sit here and just do this. Just two fingers, and sometimes maybe add his thumb. So he'd be doing, you know, he compensated for this shortcoming by using these two fingers. So he would be playing like this. And it really doesn't sound that different than if I had used all my fingers. You know, it's similar enough that he got away with it, and he did a lot of stuff like this. So the two-finger thing, even though it was such a detriment to his life, ended up redefining his entire sound. No one ever sounded like him prior to or since. So I don't know. Does that give you enough explanation? So that's really what it was. So don't be confused when someone says, "Oh, this cat only had two fingers." No, no, no. He had all his fingers, but they were deformed, and so he executed with just the two. All right, what is it? 103 or 133 or something?
Yeah, time for the little teeny two.
All right.
Great.
Let's do this honeysuckle. Let's do the head, maybe. Do the head. Do 2 times down. We'll do the head and then jump into the head last day. You know.
Okay.
Just we'll do some solos.
All right.
Just go right with the intro. Tell them that. See. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.